In the year 3145, humanity stood at the edge of the galaxy, their forces scattered across the stars, entrenched in endless battles with alien empires. This was a time when alliances shifted like the tides of war, and no one could truly trust anyone, not even their closest allies. The United Earth Fleet, still new to the galactic scene, was fighting for its place among the stars. In the heart of this vast interstellar conflict, a warrior's fate was about to be decided. The sound of blaster fire echoed through the metal corridors of the USS Archangel, a flagship of the United Earth Fleet. The battle had raged for hours, an unrelenting clash between the Terran soldiers and the mighty Zarnath Collective, a race of insectoid conquerors that had already swallowed whole star systems. But it wasn't the Zarnath that Captain Jonathan Jax Klein was focused on as he sprinted down the darkened hallways of the ship. His mission had changed. A distress call had come through, and it was coming from the alien he had once thought to be their enemy. Her name was Veshka. Veshka, an alien warrior, had been a part of the Zarnath forces, their fiercest champion, undefeated in combat. But now, she was injured, her once proud body lying motionless in a medical bay that was far too quiet. The reports had said it was a blast from an anti-graviton weapon that had paralyzed her from the waist down, leaving her stranded in a state of perpetual immobility. She was no longer the fierce warrior who had led legions. Now, she was vulnerable, helpless, and pleading for her life. Jax's boots thudded heavily against the metal floor as he reached the medical bay's entrance. His breath came in short, ragged bursts from the intensity of the run, and his mind raced, heart pounding in his chest. The orders were clear: do nothing, leave the alien to die. The fleet had made it clear that no mercy would be shown to the Zarnath. The war had gone on for decades, and every time they thought they'd be able to negotiate peace, the Zarnath would shatter that hope with another invasion. But something about Veshka's fate disturbed him. She had never shown mercy in battle, but her words, in the moments before she fell, had made him pause. She had called out for a human. For him. Jax stepped inside the medical bay and froze. There she was. Veshka's form lay in a sterile white bed, her massive insectoid limbs twitching in the harsh light of the room. Her multifaceted eyes, once filled with the predatory gleam of an apex killer, now appeared dull and defeated, as if the fire within her had been extinguished by her injury. Her exoskeleton shimmered with traces of blood and mechanical limbs, whirred softly as they tried to adjust to the unnatural position in which she was placed. She was alone. The room was empty. The only sound was the faint hum of medical equipment and the rhythmic pulse of a heart monitor. Jax's hand hovered near, his sidearm unsure of what to do. A lifetime of training screamed at him to leave, to turn away from the alien, the enemy. But a voice inside, one that he had tried to suppress for years, whispered something different. Save her. He stepped forward, his boots clanking on the cold floor. He noticed the medical readouts flashing on the nearby console. Veshka's vitals were deteriorating. Her injury, if left untreated, would likely result in a slow, painful death. The machines couldn't fix what had been done to her, not without advanced alien technology that humanity simply didn't have access to. Captain, a voice crackled over his comm link. It was Lieutenant Sarah Trent, his second in command. We're getting reports of a Zarnath retaliation force on the way. We need to move now. Our primary objective is still to take out their flagship. Don't get distracted. Jax's gaze flicked to Veshka's eyes. They were staring at him now, unblinking, filled with a strange mixture of fear and something else. A kind of reverence, as if she knew the choice he was about to make would alter the course of everything. Jax opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. His breath caught in his throat. He knew what saving her meant, what it would cost. Captain, Trent pressed, a little more urgently. Do you copy? He glanced at the console again, his fingers brushing the cold metal. He couldn't explain it, but something about the alien's struggle reached him in a way that nothing else had. Maybe it was her defiance, her refusal to give in to the inevitable. Maybe it was the way she had challenged him on the battlefield, proving time and time again that strength was not just in muscle, but in will. "I'm making a call," Jax said abruptly, cutting off the comms. "Hold the line until I get back." Jax reached for the emergency medkit and began to work quickly, his fingers moving with practiced precision as he connected an interface to Veshka's neural system. Her breathing was shallow, each inhalation sending a shudder through her body. The alien's life was hanging by a thread, and yet the machine was silent, giving no hint of how much time they had left. "You're not going to die today," Jax muttered, under his breath, more to himself than to her. He could feel the eyes of the universe on him as he tried to stabilize her condition, his mind at war with the voice that told him he was committing an unforgivable act of insubordination. He was defying the orders of his commanders, ignoring the protocols designed to ensure the survival of humanity. But another part of him, something deeper and perhaps more human than he cared to admit, told him that this was the right thing to do. There was something he had to uncover. Something about this alien warrior that went beyond their hatred and their endless war. The machines hissed, and Veshka's body jerked, a faint groan escaping her lips. She was aware of him now, more conscious than she had been since her arrival. You saved me," she whispered, her voice weak but clear. Jax's breath hitched. He nodded, though she likely couldn't see him. "I'm not leaving you to die. Not like this." Her eyes locked onto his with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. "Why?" Jax's lips pressed into a thin line as he finished his work. "I don't know, but I'll find out." The decision to save Veshka had consequences. Captain Jax Klein had broken the rules. He had defied command. He had taken a risk that few soldiers in the United Earth Fleet would ever dare. And now, Veshka, the paralyzed Zarnath warrior, was under his protection. But the galaxy was not kind to those who made mistakes, and Jax had just made a very dangerous one. The moment word of her survival spread, the political landscape shifted, and factions both within and outside of the United Earth Fleet began to react. The high-ranking officers demanded her destruction, her death as a symbol of their unyielding stance against the Zarnath. But there were others who saw her as a potential asset, a pawn in the vast and deadly game of galactic politics. Some whispered of a greater conspiracy, of dark forces within the fleet, and others still spoke of alliances that could alter the course of the war forever. Jax's life was no longer his own. He would have to face the full consequences of his decision. Veshka, on the other hand, was more than just a warrior. She was a living symbol of the Zarnath's ruthless conquest, and now she had nowhere to go. She had nothing to fight for. Or perhaps she did. In the cold depths of space, in the uncharted territories of a war-torn galaxy, the bond between a human soldier and a broken alien warrior would become something far greater than either could have imagined. The USS Archangel hummed with tension as the ship cruised through the inky blackness of space. The ever-present hum of the engines reverberated through the walls of the command center, but it did nothing to ease the sense of foreboding hanging in the air. Captain Jax Klein paced in front of the command console, his fingers drumming against the cold metal of the table. He was alone, at least that's how it felt. His mind was caught in a whirlpool of confusion. The political climate within the United Earth Fleet had turned hostile in the span of hours. The initial shock of his decision to save Veshka had worn off, only to be replaced by the sharp sting of betrayal from his own superiors. Orders came down like hammer strikes. Exterminate the Zarnath warrior. Do not allow her to live, even if she is incapacitated. It was a cruel irony that Jax was being forced to choose between his sense of honor and his duty to the fleet. The soldiers he once commanded, the people he fought beside, now saw him as a traitor. The higher-ups, most of whom had never seen battle, had labeled him a liability. The message from Fleet Command had been crystal clear. "You will be relieved of duty, Captain. A new mission will be assigned to you. The Zarnath warrior must not... live." He had ignored it. His thoughts returned to Veshka. She was still in the med bay, barely conscious after the intense medical intervention. But she had shown a remarkable resilience, her alien physiology slowly healing as the anti-graviton injury in her spine began to stabilize. It was almost as if her body itself rejected the idea of death, and that impressed him. But there was more to this alien than just a warrior's body. She had intelligence, sharp, calculating, dangerous intelligence. When Jax had saved her, he'd unknowingly thrown the galaxy into further disarray. Veshika was no longer just a soldier. She was a symbol. Jax sighed and sat down at the command console. He knew what was coming next. A fleet of Zarnath warships was already inbound, seeking retribution for the loss of one of their greatest champions. The enemy would not forgive what had happened here. But he wasn't the only one at risk. Veshka's life or death would impact more than just their survival. It could change the fate of the war itself. A voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Sarah Trent, the lieutenant who had served under him for years. She sounded exhausted but determined as always. "Captain, we've received an encrypted transmission from Fleet Command," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the air like a razor. "They want us to prepare for a formal court-martial. They're accusing you of treason." "I know." Jax's voice was low, his gaze distant as he stared out into the void of space through the glass windows of the command center. "You can't be serious, Captain," Trent said, her voice rising. "You saved her. You saved Veshka. And for what? To be court-martialed and dishonor the entire fleet? The men and women aboard this ship, our comrades, they don't understand?" "They don't have to," Jax replied. His eyes were locked onto the distant stars, but his mind was on the face of Veshka, the alien warrior who had inexplicably spared his life more than once. He couldn't turn his back on her now. He wouldn't. "What about the mission?" Trent pressed, unwilling to let go. "What about the Zarnath fleet? We're already running out of time. We'll be surrounded soon, and if we don't make a move on their flagship, we'll do both," Jax interrupted. "I'm not abandoning her. Not when she's still breathing. And I'm not leaving this ship without a fight." There was a pause on the other end of the line, a long silence, before Sarah finally spoke again. "Understood, sir. I'll have the crew ready, but you'll have to make a choice soon. We can't keep fighting both the fleet and the Zarnath forever." Jax's fingers flexed into fists, his mind racing with calculations and possibilities. The Zarnath were coming. His own people were closing in. And yet, despite the weight of the choices before him, he couldn't ignore the pull of something greater than just duty. Jax returned to the medbay after the briefing. He was met by a wall of silence, broken only by the soft beeping of Veshka's medical equipment. Her form lay motionless in the bed, but there was an air of tension in the room. The faint glow of her multifaceted eyes stirred as she sensed his presence. "Captain," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her mandibles clicked softly as her mouth twitched in a movement that might have been a smile. "You came back." "I promised I would," Jax replied, taking a seat beside her. He reached for a datapad on the table and reviewed the medical readouts. Veshka's physical condition was improving, but the question still loomed in the air. Why was she so important? "You have not left," she said, as if trying to understand him. "Your kind does not risk itself for nothing." Jax set the datapad down. "It's not that simple," he said. "My people, they're calling for your death. They want to make an example of you." Veshka's expression remained impassive. You humans have strange ideas of honor. You do not let your enemies die honorably. Instead, you cage them, trap them in your world of rules. You defy your orders to save me, and yet you will not kill me to please your people. Not yet, Jax muttered, his voice edged with uncertainty. He could see where this conversation was headed. She tilted her head slightly. Your honor is a prison. The words hit Jax harder than he expected. Was it really honor that drove him? Or was it something else? He couldn't answer. But as Veshka's eyes locked onto his, he realized something crucial. The war between their peoples, the hatred, the conflict, had to end. If humanity was going to survive in this galaxy, it couldn't just be by the strength of their weapons. Jax wasn't a fool. He knew that a single paralyzed alien warrior couldn't end the war, but perhaps she could be the key to a larger change. I don't know how to make things right, Jax admitted, his voice heavy, but I have a feeling you're not just another weapon. Veshka's eyes shimmered. That is because I am not. I am a message, Captain. Jax frowned. A message? Yes, she said softly, her voice growing stronger. I was sent here for more than battle. The Zarnath, our empire, is crumbling. The war you see, the fighting between us, is not the end of it. There is a power behind the throne, something older, more dangerous. It seeks to use both of our peoples to fuel its own desires. Jax leaned forward, disbelief clouding his mind. What are you talking about? Veshka's voice dropped to a near whisper. The true enemy is not the Zarnath Collective. It is the Vorax. The name hit Jax like a cold wave. The Vorax were a name whispered in the dark corners of the galaxy. They were ancient, shrouded in mystery, thought to be nothing more than a myth. The Zarnath Collective had once fought them, but the records of that conflict had been lost to time. You're telling me the Vorax are real? Jax asked, his mind trying to catch up with the enormity of the statement. Veshka nodded slowly. They are more than real, and they have been manipulating us both, humans and Zarnath, using us as pawns in a game for millennia. Jax's heart hammered in his chest as the gravity of the situation settled in. The war wasn't just about territory or resources. It was about something far more sinister. The Zarnath were being led into a trap, and now, so were the humans. In the days that followed, Jax wrestled with the growing uncertainty of his position. He had become more than just a soldier now. He had become a key player in a game that spanned across the stars, one that could reshape the galaxy. As he and Veshka pieced together the fragmented history of the Vorax, they discovered unsettling truths about their shared history. In their efforts to find a way to stop the Vorax, Jax would have to make impossible decisions. His loyalties would be tested, not just to his people, but to his sense of self. The tension reached its peak when a Zarnath fleet, unknowingly allied with the Vorax, arrived at the edge of United Earth space. They came to reclaim what they believed was theirs, but they would find something entirely different. The choice was no longer just about survival, it was about trust, sacrifice, and the possibility of an unexpected alliance. The USS Archangel was drifting on the cusp of a new frontier, one that would either signal the salvation of the human race or its utter annihilation. Captain Jax Klein stood on the command bridge, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. The tension was palpable, like a thunderstorm building on the horizon. The Zarnath fleet had arrived, and with them came an unexpected complication. The Vorax, who had been hiding in the shadows, were now making their move. As the flagship of the Zarnath fleet loomed in the distance, a massive hulking structure of jagged metal and pulsating lights, Jax's thoughts were a maelstrom. Veshka had been right. The Zarnath weren't the true enemy. The real danger lay beyond the visible stars, in a forgotten war that had only now begun to re-emerge. Captain, Lieutenant Trent's voice crackled through the comm, cutting through the silence like a blade. "We've received a transmission from them." Jax's stomach dropped. "The Vorax?" "No, sir. From Fleet Command. And it's not good news. They've confirmed—" Trent paused, her voice heavy with dread. "They've confirmed there's a traitor within the ranks, a high-ranking official working for the Vorax. And we have no idea who it is." Jax's heart sank as the realization hit him like a punch to the gut. His decision to save Veshka was the catalyst. The moment he defied the order to let her die, he set into motion a chain of events that had uncovered something far worse than he could have ever imagined. The Vorax weren't just manipulating the Zarnath. They had infiltrated the highest echelons of the United Earth Fleet itself. "Patch me through to the Zarnath Fleet," Jax ordered, his voice cold but unwavering. The crew scrambled to comply, but Trent hesitated for a moment. "Sir, are you sure about this? We could be walking into a trap." "I'm sure." Jax's gaze hardened, the weight of his decision settling in. "It's time we confront this head-on." A moment later, the large viewing screen on the bridge flickered to life, and the image of a Zarnath commander appeared, a hulking insectoid figure with multifaceted eyes that gleamed with a sinister intelligence. His mandibles clicked as he regarded Jax with an unsettling calmness. "This is Commander Evicth of the Zarnath Collective," the alien said, his voice like grinding stone. "I assume you have a reason for requesting this meeting, human." "I do," Jax replied, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "I know who's behind this war, and I know what the Vorax are planning." Evicth's eyes narrowed. "Your knowledge will avail you nothing. The Vorax are beyond your understanding." Jax took a deep breath, then met the alien's gaze with unwavering determination. "That's where you're wrong. I've seen their handiwork. They're the ones pulling the strings, using you, using me, using everyone. They've been hiding in the shadows for millennia, manipulating us all into fighting a war that benefits them alone." For a moment, the bridge fell silent. The crew exchanged nervous glances. Even Evicth seemed taken aback by the accusation. "You speak lies," the commander hissed, but there was doubt in his voice. "If the Vorax are as you say, then why would they allow us to rule? Why have they not crushed us before now?" "Because you were never meant to win," Jax snapped. "You were meant to weaken us. The Zarnath were never the true target of their invasion. It's humanity they've been manipulating all along." Evicth paused, his many eyes blinking rapidly as he absorbed the gravity of Jax's words. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy, until the commander spoke again, this time slower, as if considering his next words carefully. "If you are right, then the game has changed. The Vorax are no longer content with their manipulation. They have become the masters." "Then why didn't you kill me when you had the chance?" Jax asked, his voice low, filled with a quiet challenge. A flicker of something akin to hesitation crossed the alien's face, but it was gone in an instant. "Because I do not see you as a mere human. You may be the key to ending this war." Jax narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean by that?" The Zarnath commander took a deep breath, his voice dropping to a low growl. "The Vorax have a plan to destroy both our empires, to create a new order in the galaxy, a galaxy ruled by them alone. But they fear you. They fear humanity, your resilience, your unpredictability. They did not expect a human to rise to this challenge. They will stop at nothing to see you fall." Jax turned to look at his crew. Sarah Trent, his right hand in all things, stood with her arms crossed, her brow furrowed in thought. She caught his gaze and nodded. They were in this together now, for better or worse. "So what's our move?" Jax asked, his voice unwavering. "We must unite," Evicth said, his mandibles clicking with an odd sense of finality. "Together we can fight the Vorax. We must stop them before it's too late." Jax looked at the screen, weighing the offer. a tentative alliance. Between him, a human, and the commander of the Zarnath, it seemed insane, impossible. Yet the conviction in the alien's voice was undeniable. "We have no choice," Jax said, turning back to his crew. "We fight together, or we all fall. This is the moment." As Jax and Ivic discussed their plans, a sudden tremor ran through the ship. The alarms blared, and the crew scrambled to their stations. "Incoming!" Trent shouted. "Vorax warships! On an intercept course. They're targeting us, and it looks like they've taken over the Zarnath fleet systems. We've been betrayed!" The lights flickered as the ship jolted under fire. On the view screen, massive warships, sleek and deadly, loomed into view. They were the Vorax, tall, serpentine creatures with black-armored skin and glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through space itself. "Battle stations!" Jax roared. "All hands, brace for impact!" As the ship rocked under a barrage of energy weapons, Jax's mind raced. The Vorax had always been shadows in the dark. Now they were real, and they were here, right in front of him. The true war was about to begin. Without warning, the screen went black. A burst of static followed, and then a chilling voice filled. The bridge, a voice that was not human. "Captain Klein, it's too late. The Vorax are here. You've played your part. But now, the galaxy will burn." The transmission ended with a final deadly click. Jax's blood ran cold. Suddenly, the bridge doors exploded open, and Veshka, still weak but surprisingly alert, stepped through. Her insectoid exoskeleton gleamed in the dim light, and her eyes were filled with something darker than fear, a deadly resolve. "You were right, Captain," she said, her voice icy. "They are already inside." Jax didn't have time to respond. The walls trembled as the Vorax warships opened fire again. The fleet was closing in. The Zarnath fleet was retreating, torn between their loyalty to Jax and their centuries of war with humanity. Veshka turned to him, her voice ringing with urgency. "We can stop them, but we must move now. I know how." Jax looked at her, then back at the view screen, which showed a terrifying fleet of Vorax warships closing in on their position. This was it. The moment they either stood together or fell. A part Jax's heart pounded. "How?" Her mandibles clicked together in a cold smile. "By becoming something neither the Zarnath nor the Vorax expected." Suddenly everything came into focus. The alliance. The betrayal. The secret weapon. The galaxy's fate would not be decided by fleets or firepower. It would be decided by them. To be continued. The stakes had never been higher. The game had just changed, and the next move would determine the fate of the universe. Would Jax and Veshka succeed in uniting their people, or would the Vorax's long-awaited uprising rip the galaxy apart? The true battle had just begun.